Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. This is Gemini Brett here to talk about the shamanic superpower of nostalgia and perhaps the necessity of it. Music can say so much more than words. But I'll say right now that my experience of that music was, this isn't what I want to be playing right now. This is not the thing. Should I just stop this and start over? And that's actually a really powerful and important resonant experience for me in regards to nostalgia around not feeling good enough, or practiced enough, and or soulful enough, or in touch enough with the music, which is something I've experienced many times in my life. Many moons, friends. And let's honor that the moon is in the sign of Virgo right now, which is a place of practice and polishing the stone. Sometimes perfection, of course, sometimes to a fault. And I'm really tuned into moon today because it's kind of like moon is retrograde. Now that, my friends, is impossible. Absolutely impossible, right? The two lights we can see, as far as the moving bodies are concerned, the planetas, the wanderers, that can never move retrograde or backwards through the signs and the constellations, are the luminaries, are the lights, are the sun and the moon, right? Sun moving forward about 1 degree per day, always. Moon moving forward on average 13 and a bit every day, always. They will never retrograde. But moon might feel retrograde today. Why? Because moon is in mutual reception with retrograde Mercury, right? So here's the chart. This was where I live in Richmond, California, in the Bay Area. It was 7:17 a.m. Pacific time. But I've cast this chart with the 0 Aries, the natural zodiac, as we call this. Kind of, it's meant to look, in a sense, like a houseless system. And not, because the truth is the tropical signs are the Earth's houses, all right? But this is just set up in that way for the houses of Earth, which are the signs. It was Cancer that was rising this morning when Moon perfected the sextile with Mercury, and that perfected this essence of mutual reception, because according to the language of our craft, the moon is said to rule the sign of Cancer and Mercury that of Virgo. This, by the way, is the only alignment that allows for this mutual reception or mutual exchange between Moon and Mercury, according to the old language. Because if, for example, Moon is in Gemini, Mercury's other sign, and Mercury's in Cancer, according to the tradition, the only domicile of the moon, there's no reception because neighboring signs do not see one another according to the tradition. So this is the only way it works. And one thing I'll say this is about is helping us find our true north, bringing us into deep experience of self. So now, I've got a lot of asteroids on this chart. I mean, I want to honor that this is happening with Mercury near Vesta, who is herself square Juno, and there's a trine to Ceres, right? I mean, look at this, right? The moon, Mercury, Ceres, wedge. And we can look to Vesta and Uranus and Taurus and see this half trapezoid shape going down. I guess it's a whole trapezoid. Anyway, there's so much more to see with that. I am, however, for now, I'm going to take these asteroids off the chart. So we can see that, and let me take Chiron off as well. Right here are these kind of 10 primary planets that are used by modern astrologers, which of course are Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, right? I leave the nodes on here. And half of those planets are retrograde, okay? So Mercury is retrograde, marked in this software Astro Gold by red numbers. Mercury's retrograde. Venus was retrograde until like yesterday, really the night before, okay? So this means Venus, let me just show you here. We'll go to Venus's position is 5 Gemini, and her speed is like 3 arc minutes per day, right? I mean, she's like stopped. We're going to see that is also the truth for Neptune, who's only at 7 arc seconds per day. Neptune, of course, generally moving much more slowly than Venus, but Neptune just recently stationed retrograde. So there was this period where we had 6 planets retrograde. As soon as Neptune stationed retrograde a few days ago, oh, it's more than that now, Neptune joined this fold of Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto retrograde. Venus was retrograde and Mercury retrograde at the time, right? So since then, Venus has stationed direct. So we moved from 6 retrograde planets to 5. Yeah, and you can find on my YouTube page a transmission about the 6 planets retrograde and what that might mean. And that period is certainly still alive. And I think that it's not just these 5 right now retrograde planets, which of course are Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. It's kind of like 6, and in a sense, this big one through this trip, because this mutual reception of Moon and Mercury allows for the Moon to feel more into Mercury's current experience and vice versa, okay? How would that work? What is the idea of mutual reception? It's a really interesting concept in astrology. Of course, it depends upon the concepts of essential dignity, this idea that planets have domiciles, that they make homes in particular signs, or people usually say they rule signs. I prefer to say they're the guides of particular signs. And that's a trip. Like that, should that be the thing at all? I mean, with Moon and Virgo, we are talking about systems, you know? And with Mercury retrograde in Cancer, we are talking about, you know, at least family values, but maybe traditions. Not maybe. We're talking about traditions, you know. Uranus is in Taurus is linked in here. What is the body of astrology, I might suggest? And then we saw that series in Pisces is in that alignment too. So there's a lot here that's really about let me say it this way, I guess, the maternal line. And I don't just mean like your mother's 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 mother. You know that that information is passed down through our mitochondrial DNA. Like it's way easier to know, for example, like the feminine line from which you derive than it is the masculine. It's interesting that we do this opposite thing, perhaps in patriarchal time, of patrilineal naming system, right? Like my last name is that of my father's father's father or whatever. I mean, but maybe that's just the attempt to try to preserve something because, you know, the deeper library of the DNA is talking about the mother's line. And that seems like a very strange trip and tangent for me to take, probably because it is. Or maybe not. Anyway, I feel at this time we were in this really significant Cancer solar eclipse, right? And we say that that new moon, this lunation, is about Cancer and moon and nurturing and mothering, you know? And then interestingly to me, it's like Father's Day is always programmed to be around the time that the sun ingresses Cancer. But that's a Northern Hemisphere thing. That's, I think, honoring the height of the light. Anyway, mutual reception. You know, this came to me from my brother Gary Caton. It's the idea of the planets being in like a foreign exchange program, right? So Mercury's like, hey, I want to live in Cancer for a while. And Moon's like, cool, let's like change homes. Like, come stay at my place. I've always wanted to like explore the language and the culture and the cuisine of Virgo. Like, why don't I go stay at your pad and you stay here? Cool. And look, they left the list, right? You know how that is when you're visiting a foreign country and somebody's like, I'm not there, but stay at my place, and they leave the list. And they're like, I know you can't speak the language. Learn this phrase. Never pay a cabbie what he asks for. Never go here after 8 p.m. Always go here after 9, you know, whatever. And you get the list, right? And then it's like, hey, we're in different time zones, but look, phone line's always open. I've got you, right? And you did the same for them because it's a foreign exchange. They're at your place. They've got the list. They've got the phone line. That's the mutual reception, right? So we get to explore a very different language. Is Virgo the way of the moon? It is for about 2.3 days, about every 27.3 days, you know, when it comes down to it. And in that sense, really, should we say the moon has a home and only one home, you know? She only spends a twelfth of her time there on average, right? Like she's the twelfth of her time is in Virgo. So on one level, I think, you know, I came up in a system at the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School where Daniel Jamario, like his mentor, Dane Ridger, they just don't do dispositors and domicile lords and essential dignity in that. It's just like, why would the moon not be just as happy in Virgo as the moon is in Cancer? For Ridger, it was much more about this phase, right? Let's look at the truth that moon is sextile sun +7. You know, what is that? All right. Anyway, so when we go back to the old family values and the traditions of the body of the astrological craft, yeah, there is this idea that the moon and Mercury are exchanging information now in a very powerful way, you know, in a way that I would say is kind of more equal and powerful than ever can be done. Right? I mean, the other consideration would be like a conjunction, which traditionally was called cohabitation. So, I mean, this happened recently. Moon met Mercury in Cancer. What happens about when the times when Moon meets Mercury in Virgo, right? Well, it's not from this idea of domiciles and whatnot. It's not really equal footing, right? Like Moon comes into Cancer and she's like, "Hey, Mercury, this is how it works around here." You know, in Cancer too, right? Please say your please and thank you. It's like, hey, look, when we finish our dinner, we just put the thing in the sink, you know, whatever, right? It's like, this is how it goes. And also, let me tell you about my grandma or whatever, yeah. When they meet in Virgo, yeah, Moon's coming in and Mercury's like, the list is a little bit longer about this is how things go around here, right? And it's not to be polite. That's like Cancer, right? In Virgo, it's like, because this is what's going to keep the ship running at maximum efficiency. This. And the Moon's just like, oh my gosh, right? Like, I just want to feel, right? So why do we do the manners and the things? To feel okay. Why do we say the please and thank yous? Because it expresses gratitude and honor, and it's because it's what we've always done. Like, why do we put the plate in the sink or maybe even finish the job? Because it makes the home feel good, and it's a safe place, you know? You know, that's so clean because safe, where Virgo's clean because efficient, right? And so, importantly, the moon wants to just feel into the night and into the dream space, right? I mean, Virgo, really, in its rightful place, as far as I'm concerned, is the way of the priestess, the green man, the yogi, yogini, our sacred work. It is temple place, you know. It's like, it's not just this OCD computer programmer as it is sadly painted to be by too many astrology books on my shelves. But you know, Virgo keeps it clean because cleanliness is next to godliness, where Cancer keeps it clean because that's safe. You know? I mean, safe in regards to hygiene. This is a really interesting thing that showed up as far as the time in which I'm recording this, right? With like more fear-based results around number spikes and the percentages and all these things, you know, and it's like, oh, washing my hands until there's no skin left and that whole trip, right? Which is just, pardon me, but effing mental, right? So there's something here really, I think, about a beauty, about a cooperation, about a seeing, a support, a love between Moon and Mercury, which are often described as the two parts of mind. Yeah. So that Mercury, in so many regards, is conscious thought, and thinks are things, friend, right? So there's only a cup here because I believe there's a cup here. What's the kid teach Neo in the Matrix? The trick of bending the spoon isn't bending the spoon, it's bending your mind. That gets into the more subtle, subconscious realms, though I prefer to say superconscious. You know, the moon is more about memory. She's also therefore about forgetting, right? She offers the pool of lethe that we drink from when we come in to forget what we really are so we can focus on doing a thing, in my case, that they call a Brett. Or you call whatever you call it, a persona, you know? Maybe too much in a tale for another time, but Hermes, I will say, tells us much about this than the incarnational function of Sol and Moon in the amazing Emerald Tablets. And actually, I would encourage you to find the Emerald Tablets of Hermes, not the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Emerald Tablets of Hermes today. Wikipedia has a really good page, and actually there you will read Isaac Newton's version. Newton, who was just far too mystical to be considered what we would call today Newtonian. Anyway, looking back to Newton, looking all the way back to Hermes, it's about looking back right now. It really is. Actually, if you take that Emerald Tablets of Hermes path, I encourage you to read many translations and to attempt to put those translations into the context of the times in which they were written, the person who wrote them and their scene, like that whole trip. And you will start weaving together a web that is a wave of time. So we literally might feel more retrograde, even though since Venus is stationed direct recently, there's less planets retrograde than there were 4 days ago. We might feel more retrograde today because this mutual reception of Moon and Mercury, okay, allows for Mercury to experience some of what Moon's about, and that's really helpful because Mercury, of course, is on this 3-week retrograde thing, as thrice great Hermes does 3 times a year, right? He's under the beams. He was a very visible evening star. He's now gone. He's going into the compost place, right? Where the wisdom that Mercury has cultivated during this last 4-month cycle, which began in Pisces, is, I think it was February 15th, is like now composting into soil to plant the seeds for the next cycle, which will begin when Mercury in the Sun align for Cazimi here very soon in a theater called You. So to compost like all of this wisdom and this Pisces wisdom, I mean, Mercury, the overmind, we're in this still, has been tuned to the dream and the oneness and the spirit of the Pisces reality. And also, by the way, to the confusion and to the delusion and to I can't possibly speak this thing. It's a matter of my faith or belief or whatever, you know? So I'm actually looking forward to the Sun-Mercury, or I should say Mercury-Sun conjunction coming up and the beginning of this Cancer cycle. But I think that Moon's offering Mercury an opportunity now in Virgo to kind of like get some clarity about how it's been since February. What have you done? Like, what are the specific, oh, there was that, I went there. No, I was gonna go there, but I wasn't allowed to. I was gonna go there, I was gonna go there. That's what my list looks like. So instead, I did. So instead, I did. So instead, oh, right. And because in my case, like I wasn't able to teach at retreat, I had to recreate that course for like a virtual teaching. And remember how I said the good news about that is that it was going to lead me to create a online class that people could download and I could finally have some, what do they call it? Passive income. So why not? And then I didn't finish that gig yet, right? So the moon right now is like, okay, cool, you did this thing, all these things came in the dream. Now if you really want to compost that soil, don't completely forget, right? Like write it down, because a new cycle begins, a Cancer cycle, a cycle of beginnings and turning around. This is tropical signs, or what we call cardinal signs now, because they're the cardinal directions. Like there's going to be a new cycle where the mind is now tuned into Cancer. So we're going to have, all sorts of things. It's a different video. What are your manners? What family are you from? What tribe are you from? What country are you from? It's going to be interesting, to say the least. It's already alive, certainly in this eclipse cycle. It's part of it, right? But I think the things that you've been dreaming into since February, now it's like a really good time to look back and kind of put down the principal points of the things, so that when we kind of awaken from this beautiful visionary dream into a deeper state, I'll say, of kind of conscious clarity and like the magic of the mundane, it's like, okay, cool. Let's take all that stuff and now this is what we do and when we do it, Saturn style. And Saturn, by the way, retrograde now in Aquarius, will soon return to Capricorn. And that's really, through Kelly Lee Phipps, the plan the work and work the plan. And so right now it's a great time to kind of put together the data points, okay? So where have you been since February? I just want to make sure that I'm giving a decent date. So when was Mercury last conjoined the Sun? And so the exterior conjunction was in Taurus on May 4th, but that was the midpoint of the cycle that began. That began in Pisces, February 25th. So I was off by 10 days. So February 25th, and then that's like a Pisces, what I call a Pisces Taurus cycle, opening to the dreams and initiating that into the body mind, which, by the way, just looks like relaxing so we can dream and rest and sleep, which I think I missed that boat. And then the next Mercury Sun conjunction here in Cancer will be on June 30th. Look at where Saturn is at the time, right? And because we can just go some day after this, Saturn regress Capricorn. Okay, so there's a lot going on right now. And I think this is like, before we jump into all of that, like remember where we're coming from, remember where we've been. Remember the dream. And there's a really beautiful old technique of astrology that is typically employed in horary, where we answer a question, kind of divinational astrology, or intellectual astrology sometimes. The technique is called translation of light. I love to use it in natal charts. I love to use it in event charts like this. And the general idea is that the moon's, one of her gigs is to carry the energy of her previous conversation to that of her next. Let me say it that way. So moon sextile Mercury, let me go back before this. So this one actually, yeah, great. So I can just go some hours back and we'll look at when moon came into Virgo. So when she did, the first aspect she made, it looks like maybe this quincunx to Saturn, but according to the tradition, the quincunx is not an aspect, which means to see. We don't see our neighboring signs, and we don't see the neighbors of the opposite sign. So Virgo does not see Leo or Libra, where we don't have planets right now, although Juno is in Libra. And Mercury does not see Aquarius or Aries. Okay, so this Moon Saturn alignment, I'll say, is definitely an alignment, but according to the traditions, there's no translation of light there because there's no visible ray. So the first aspect that Moon made in the sign of Virgo since coming in on June 25th yesterday was this sextile to the sun. And then she carried the light of the sun to Venus. And then brought Venus to Mercury. Now the tradition also is not going to look, by the way, at carrying this light of Mercury, right? Once she perfects that aspect here, not going to carry Mercury to Uranus. It's about Ptolemaic aspects, and we're talking about conjunction, sextile, square, trine, and opposition to visible planets, right? We're not talking about the moon because it's the moon doing the work, although you can apply this to other planets as well, but we're talking Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, right? So Moon from here, she already sextiled Sun, and then she squared Venus. So and she squared, by the way, let's go back to that time, Venus right after Venus station direct. And there's tension in the square, right? Like these two signs of Gemini and Virgo, they're both traditionally said to be mercurial, but one's about the mind and one's about the body mind, right? Air and earth. And those things can certainly work together, and when they do, we find the heart in between, but they can certainly not agree. And Gemini, I will say very importantly, is a very spiritual sign. It's harder to see that truth than it is for the other mutable signs of Virgo and Sagittarius and Pisces, the priestess, the seeker, and the mystic, you know. But this is that kind of trickster, sacred jester, shapeshifter energy, right? But they're just going to do it very differently. We're going to seek spirit in the questions. Who, what, why, Gemini, why? You know, Gemini, how, Gemini, who? Gemini, hi, Gemini, how do you do? Like, you know, in the scriptures, in the journey. And then when we get to Virgo, it's like, no. It's in the practices, right? We've got to sit for this many hours a day. This is how, you know, we meditate. This is how we pray. This is whatever, you know, this is my Qigong. So that square can be rough. But it's also like Moon, so she had this sextile with Sun. I was looking at it last night. It's this perfect shape of the moon. It's just like this, you know? And she was bringing that energy of, okay, earth and water, Virgo and Cancer, and then suddenly that meets Venus in the air. And it's like, whoa, we were chilling out. We were into the night. And now you want to tell me about thought and thinking and mind, Gemini, and all these things. And Venus is like, yo, I've been backwards for 40 days and 40 nights, and you know, a new cycle's begun, and I'm so excited. It was like we were trying to chill, and I can't even track all those things, and you know, there can be tension there. So Moon now brings that tension of the Venus conversation to Mercury, right? And Moon's like, I don't know. She told me she was moving backwards, and what is that? And Mercury's like, yeah, dude, I'm doing it too. Like, wait, what? Because Moon cannot travel retrograde. But it's easier to understand it in this way. Like, Mercury's in the Moon's place. Mercury, if he looks around to try to describe to the Moon some kind of metaphor for what it is to move retrograde and have that feeling, he's literally living in the Moon's house. He can look around and say, oh, yeah, you know how, you know, in that cool sink you have, how the water does that vortex thing? And the Moon's like, I know, like, I love that so much. Like, it started on this day. And yeah, Mercury's like, it's like that. And so the Moon can understand, right? And the Moon's able to kind of track Mercury more easily in Virgo, according to the old language. So, and the sextile is said to be like a very kind of benefic. It agrees by polarity, right? These are both down and in signs, Virgo and Cancer, while Virgo is down and in, and Gemini is up and out, you know? So there's like Mercury kind of offers some soothing and some ease to Moon, who for a short time between this square with Venus and now the sextile with Mercury could have felt a little confused, like a little erratic, feeling like we need to like take care of this thing, and now it's just like chill out. Okay, but what does that chill out mean? I want to read something that I read on a Facebook group in the Astrology Hub Inner Circle today, and oh my gosh, and am I going to be able to find it? Because it was just such a perfect post to describe what's happening here. Bear with me, please, for a second. I'm just going to go have a look. Here we go. It was, oh no, that's not it. Right, so Moon's or Cancer's like, yeah, bring him into that feeling, and then the Virgo's like, you're gonna have to go look around and do the things, and where is it? And oh no. And I put it in this like particular place. Let me try one other spot. Okay, here we go. From Briar Rose, who wrote, what in the universe is going on today? Past traumas are popping up everywhere, and it's one dead end after another. Oh, my Lanta. Which is a powerful post, right? My Lanta, isn't it blue? Yeah, totally. Hold on a second. This is random, but I've got to look to Mylanta, which also soothes the stomach. It's not the place where I go, but let's check it out, right? Coat and Cool. The chocolate mint flavor Mylanta. You sure we want to do that, y'all? Okay. But I love the kind of Coat and Cool. Cancer, medicine, plant medicine, Virgo. Let's honor herbal medicine, Virgo. So that's a really fun thing to call out too. And it's blue, So it is that energy of like cooling. My Lanta is also, the moon medicines are like, are thick like that. The medical term, right, is mucousy, which is a weird term to get to. Anyway, let's honor like what was most important about that share. I want to read that again. What in the universe is going on today? Past traumas are popping up everywhere, and it's one dead end after another. Okay. Well, for one thing, we just talked about the translation of light. Now, between the time that Moon squared Venus and sextiled Mercury, this chart, Moon did trine Uranus, right? And Uranus is a planet that we often speak to for trauma. And it doesn't have to be trauma, right? I mean, it's like things that force you into the moment now. So we often speak with Uranus, car accidents. But I love my brother David Cochran, a mentor, speaks about Uranus also as free jazz. It's just like it's just freaky and it's like it comes out of nowhere, but it's all about bringing you into the here and now, right? So like, what? Like, sorry about that loud noise, but there you go, right? And so there's something about Uranus and Taurus, who, by the way, is just about to change decans from the first 10 degrees to the second 10 degrees of Taurus. And I think that's a really beautiful and important shift. It's shifting from the bounds, and let's see if we can show this here in Astro Gold software. I think we can. I think we can do essential dignities and see that Uranus is now in the terms of Mercury. So that's the bounds. And then, like if I show you a chart for, I could just go a week from now, 2 weeks from now, and we find Uranus now in the second decan, you're going to find that that's Uranus in the bounds of the Oh, still in the bounds of Mercury. I'm sorry. I meant to say the face. Okay. So the face is the decan. So the second decan is the face of the moon, where the first decan of Taurus is the face of Mercury. So here go face, Mercury, bounds, Mercury, right? So there's a lot of Mercury happening for Taurus right now, and it's going to move into more of a moon space. According to this old idea, not only that planets rule signs, but also portions of signs like the 10-degree decans and the strangely divided bounds or terms. And that's more than we want to do in that reality, I think, in this moment. Because let's honor the power of this post. I'm actually going to put this chart away. Oh, wait, before I do, let me show you that this is alive for a while, okay? Translation of light. Look, I have to move a full day from here. Moon moves on average, what? 13.18 degrees per day. About 13 and a third degrees per day. And the moon, like if I bring in Lilith right now, we're going to see that the moon, if you know about the astronomy of Lilith, is actually moving a little faster than normal because the point opposite Lilith is where the moon is closest to your Earth and therefore biggest, brightest, fastest. That's called the perigee. So we'll find that the moon's daily speed right now is faster than 13 and a third degrees. There you go, 14. Okay? So tomorrow, where's the moon going to be? 12 plus 14 at 26. So let's go there and we'll just look at that chart. And so what has she done by then, right? See how the moon, by then, will have trine Jupiter. And then we'll be translating Jupiter's trine energy to opposing Pisces Mars. And then the moon will have a very short, what's called void of course, which is the period from the modern perspective between her last Ptolemaic aspect with a visible planet in the sign and the time she crosses into the next sign. Let's just clean some tea that we spilled. Okay, so importantly, let's look again at this mutual reception moment, which was 7:17 a.m. Pacific. And we're going to move from there and look at when does Moon trine Jupiter, which is her next aspect. And notice that she's moving from a sextile with retrograde Mercury to a trine with retrograde Jupiter, okay? An agreement in earth signs. That happens tomorrow morning Pacific at 3:51 a.m. Okay, so it's about 20 and a half hours of moon, what we say, carrying this retrograde Mercury conversation, this sextile with retrograde Mercury. Okay, so this thing's alive. It's a perfect time to go back, to bring it back. Right, so not only, as I was mentioning before, look, we've been in this 4-month Mercury and Pisces cycle, like, go there, right? T on the keyboard. But you've been in a, 44-year experience on Earth in this particular persona they call Brett, I can say to myself, and more. How long has it been for you? Where were you 4 years ago? Where were you 40 years ago? Where were you 4 lifetimes ago? Where were your ancestors 4 generations ago? In Cancer, right where the Mercury is, and the moon is really tuning into the Mercury and this retrograde energy of so many planets going back, right? Cancer, which is the energy of the north. Right? I mean, literally, the spine of Gaia is leaning towards zero Cancer, where this eclipse was at all times. It's now pointing to a very important place in space. There's so much alive here. What is your true north? And in the northern hemisphere, that north place, well, it's marked by the North Star above the ground. The sun is north when it's in the middle of the night. The moon in the middle of the moon's journey below the horizon. It is the IC, the Imam Chele, the bottom of the heavens, the buried, suppressed stuff. So this Moon Mercury mutual reception is allowing us and asking us and inviting us to go into that. And this is a time, of course, where the amazing revolutionary happening in the world without is asking us to look at our lineage and at our ancestry and, to do some cleanup, not only on aisle self, but on aisle like for the whole line. So this is a thing. And also, what did I write in the title of this? I'm forgetting the wording now, but I think the shamanic superpower of purposeful nostalgia. What's your earliest memory? Is it your earliest memory? Or is it something that your parent described about that photo they showed you of the time when you were 3 and first rolled down the hill? Whatever. I mean, I remember losing Princess Leia in the radiator. I think that's mine. I don't think anybody took a picture of that. But anyway, what is your earliest memory? And how did I feel about losing that Princess Leia with her crazy plastic cape and stuff, I mean, look, it's the Star Wars figures that probably first brought me into alignment with this path of being a translator of the celestial conversation, right? And Princess Leia, interesting to go there, but that goddess energy. Anyway, so what is your earliest memory and how do you feel about it now? Are your feelings about it now the feelings that you had at the time when that memory was formed, right? Or are they translated through the light of your growth and conscious awareness looking back upon that memory? And look, let's honor too that post that in many ways, and thank you, Briar Rose, for inspiring to share. Let's look at the memory of your earliest trauma, for example. And while I'm not trying to suggest losing Princess Leia in the radiator is not traumatic for a kid of that consciousness who is very connected to that particular goddess, I want to talk about deeper traumas. What is your not memory of early trauma? Or if you play in this way of past life trauma or whatever, where we're being called to go back there and being asked to tune into practices. So I'm going to just walk in another branch for a second. This is also, and I'm speaking to myself loudly here, a powerful time and probably an important time to go back to some of the spiritual practices, right? Back to Cancer, retrograde Mercury, mutual reception, Virgo Moon, spiritual practices, you see that allow a safe space for your soul mind, your super consciousness, right? Not necessarily the thing, but the one of the dream to go re-enter that dream. And not like, I've got to It's just like, do the practice, right? For me, it can be the drum and the chant, sitting, whatever. I'm going there next. And just allow, like the dreamer, to go handle it. Without needing, there doesn't have to be an answer. Got to release that, release ourselves into the vision space and into the softness of self and super consciousness, right? And it may bring you back to these past traumas. What do you do about it? Probably not Mylanta, but it's the right image, right, of the blue rivers of spirit, of consciousness, of faith, of dream. And here's what I would suggest. One very powerful practice is when we awaken from a nightmare, for example, or if we have like a reoccurring nightmare, or even just a recurring like beauty dream that we cannot understand to save our lives, it can be so powerful to get ourselves back into that dream state, right? So conscious practices to relax the conscious mind and open the super conscious mind. And I would suggest you do that for like this whole day, okay? and go rewrite that dream. Go back into the nightmare. And when does it get scary because that thing is chasing you? What happens now that you're in your safe place and held and in your body? What happens if you just turn around and look at that dragon that's chasing you? Oops, it turns into a teddy bear, you know? What was that traumatic experience of youth that has completely stained your path ever since? How can we look at that dragon and is it willing to teddy bear for us, you know? So that's a challenging thing. I mean, the levels of trauma, right? I mean, I'm not going to speak to your trauma. That's yours, my friend, right? But the shamanic superpower of purposeful nostalgia would be to go back, honor the thing. This is mine. And by the way, this is mine, but it's not nearly as harsh as what they went. That is completely dishonoring your trauma. No. Embrace your lead. Love it. Then gold. Right? So going there, and maybe even going back if you can to before that moment. So in deep early traumas, for example, sometimes part of us will go away to stay somewhere safe. The innocence, the trust, right? Like, where did that piece go? And can we bring it back? Now, when we bring that back, let's say you might be bringing in something that has the maturity of a 4-year-old, because let's say that's when something happened, right? You've got to be careful with that. Because a 44-year-old, you know, behaving like a 4-year-old is not necessarily a good thing or an acceptable thing or an easy thing to process for either of us, right? So we have to be mature and we have to honor that. We have to hold this one and love this one and honor that it's going to have the tantrums and the whole things, right? And probably it's like, oh, why? That's why I'm like this. Okay, cool. What else does it have? Innocence, trust, the amazing wisdom of naivete held by the one before they were betrayed and developed a pain of distrust. And it's at least a day long. And honor too that between the moon sextile with retrograde Mercury and the trine with retrograde Jupiter is the opposition with retrograde Pisces, right? In about half a day from now. And maybe I should just post the short version of that last bit. It takes me a while to get there. And I like to do it through the details, right? Virgo, and showing you the system of astrology. See that Virgo, Mercury and Virgo. But why to do this? To get out? No, to get in. In this retrograde, Cancer Mercury says go in. Go into the memory. Go into the lineage. Go into the ancestry. Go into the voice of the land. Go into the spirit of earth. Go into the old ways and reclaim your true north. See you in that dream. Love and planets to you, friends. Oh. Yeah, so maybe actually I can try this again. And in a place where I don't need to do it right. In fact, doing it what I think is wrong is probably right. Just have to not bend the spoon, bend the mind.